I did not consider this a horror story all on its own at first, but the more I talk about it to others, the closer it feels to one. For this campaign, our dungeon master wanted to implement quote-unquote realistic bartering, which sounded fine in theory. There's a non-bartered price, higher, and a bartered price you get with good roleplay, or failing that, good rolls. Lower prices. Sounds good. However, it was a nightmare to get anything, especially something he insisted we needed, like rations in practice. For example, he said we needed 10 rations for 10 days of travel on the river. The only store selling rations sold them for 1 gold piece over the maximum budget we had, even bartering the price down. The lowest he would go for anyone, and yes, we had to each take turns, was 1 gold piece below our maximum budget. So we would still be missing 9 rations. We ended up just blowing off the system altogether to make a pair of basic fishing rods and collecting bait to gather the rations ourselves. But before the campaign fell through, he tried the bartering thing again when we had some real gold to spend from a boss battle. Since we hadn't spent anything before, you'd think we were better off, right? Nope. Once again, just one shop in a major city sold any kind of gear upgrade, and it was the most niche homebrew garbage ever for the cost of 6 gold pieces past your budget, and that's with the discounts already. For being the heroes of the city that took out the threat blocking trade along the river,
thank you so much, my good sir. My daughter's life has been saved by you and your friends. Of course, it's our pleasure. For the road, though, we could use some healing potions. Our cleric took some arrows in the battle that would do a great deal in helping us to help others in the future. I do have some healing potions right here. It will cost you only about 2,000 gold pieces. That's a lot. Do you think we could bargain that down? No. Where's your kid again?
man, this dungeon master really nailed down the ideal fantasy of being just shy of affording the thing you really need to survive. Who doesn't love that, right? I recently started playing Dungeons & Dragons after making a new friend who DMs, and she invited me to join her group. I'd never played it, but thanks to about 300 hours of Baldur's Gate 3, I was somewhat familiar with how the game worked. For example, when the Dungeon Master was helping me create my character, she asked if I wanted to have the ability Misty Step. She explained what it was, and I said, "Oh, I've seen how it works in Baldur's Gate 3. I know what that is." To which she was super relieved because it meant not having to go into great detail about the mechanics. Anyways, I joined in October, and the Dungeon Master decides to do a Halloween one-shot, placing me and the rest of the party, their classes are important to the story, in front of a haunted mansion, where we are mercenaries tasked to investigate and get rid of whatever is wrong with this place. After dealing with ghastly apparitions, a Chucky-like doll, and a death tyrant, which is... Oh, right, the Lich Beholder, right? Okay. See, I know some things about this game. Anyway, we somehow managed to defeat that thing without taking casualties. Things were looking really great for this party. Eventually, myself and the other 2 players enter a room and are subsequently locked inside. The Dungeon Master tells us we have 20 minutes to figure out a way out before we die from poison gas or something. After a few investigation checks, we see a human body on top of an operating table that's missing an arm, a leg, and its head. There are piles of legs, arms, and heads, all of which have different numbers attached, and a journal giving a sequence of numbers for each body part. Leg 1 4 blank blank 10, arm 1 3 blank blank 27, head 18 16 blank blank 64, etc. They were a lot more complicated in actuality. So basically, we had to find the leg, arm, and head numbered with the missing number in each sequence. Okay, it's a cool puzzle, but like, who operates a door like that?
Okay, sir, we have finished the majority of your evil lair. We're at the final stages. All we need is some security on your door. So I was thinking some kind of magical password system. You know, just speak the password, door opens, nice and simple. What do you think? No, that's not what I'm looking for. Instead, I was thinking we start with a dismembered corpse.
1 hour later.
And then they need to decipher the sequence of numbers in order to reassemble the corpse in a specific way. Otherwise, the poison gas will stream down and kill them all. I mean, we could do that. But why would we do that? Just why? It's quite simple. Or complex, rather. A password is too easy. This overly complex scheme will prevent any adventurer from infiltrating my lair. It just seems overly convoluted. If there's a password on the door, they wouldn't be able to get in, but you're literally giving them a way to solve a puzzle so that they can open the door. Do you want your enemies to find you? I'm not using this as a puzzle. It is a security measure. You are literally writing down a book of hints right now. No, look, it's a good idea. I mean, where are you even going to get the dismembered corpse? You know, I'm not even mad. I really should have seen that coming.
When the Dungeon Master was listing the numbers, I was the only one who wrote them down, and being under pressure to write them all, accidentally wrote the last number incorrectly. I only realized when there were 3 minutes left, I might have written the number incorrectly, but by then it was too late, making it so we failed the test and my character, along with 2 others, died. The other 2 guys started arguing with the Dungeon Master that she had listed them off too quickly, but the DM retorted that they could have asked any time for her to repeat the sequence and that they should have written it down themselves as well. Regardless of the Dungeon Master assuring me that I was the only one who did things quote-unquote right, I felt really guilty for not having written down the numbers correctly, causing 2 players to die. It was also kind of a bad week for multiple reasons. An event like this, which wouldn't have bothered me otherwise, ended up making me grab my things and leave after giving some BS excuse as to why I needed to leave. Even after the party told me I could just use fastcharacter.com to make a new character. I did end up talking to the Dungeon Master about it, and she apologized for making my first experience stressful, but I assured her that it wasn't her fault and that this was a result of my anxiety. The real horror of the story is my social anxiety preventing me from just continuing on with the game after having experienced my first character death in Dungeons & Dragons, and my conscience weighing heavy after something that, by all means, wasn't really my fault. I hope to continue playing in the actual Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign, but I hope I can handle my character's death a little better. This might be a hot take, but my blood was sort of boiling when I was reading about that puzzle. Look, it sounds like an interesting puzzle, regardless of its narrative nonsense. However, the Dungeon Master refusing to give any reminders is a little bit harsh. Look, I'm not exactly a hand-holdy Dungeon Master, but especially when character death is on the line, I'll give a reminder, especially if it's down to one minor mistake. The Dungeon Master never indicated that there even was a mistake in the first place. Why would the other 2 players ask her if there was some error in your note-taking? In fact, why do you even need to take the notes at all? From what I can tell, the numbers in story, in-game, they're written down already. Your characters should just be able to peek over and look at them. You shouldn't need to write them down and memorize them. I don't know, man. I'm okay with character death, but death like this just feels so cheap. One little mistake killing 2 other people's characters, it's never not going to be frustrating. And it's not the writer's fault, by the way. I'm sure anxiety had a factor, but the DM also has some responsibility. At least she said sorry. Hey Crispy, big fan of your channel. Thank you, by the way. I've been debating whether or not to share this story, but I finally decided, what the heck, you can frame this as Am I the A-hole if you think it fits, but I'm pretty sure no one walks out of this completely clean. So onto the story. Back in early September, a co-worker I get along with well invited me to join a Dungeons & Dragons game he was DMing. I asked him what I should play as, and he suggested making a high charisma character since the party had mostly dumped charisma. So I rolled up a high charisma half-elf mastermind rogue with the charlatan background, a gentleman thief, con artist, swindler, and snake oil salesman, the kind of guy who would steal your watch and then sell it back to you. The Dungeon Master loved the character and set about introducing me to the group. There were 6 of us in total, including myself and the DM, but the only other member who was important to the story was Wizard. Wizard didn't seem hostile at first. He was polite, but not super welcoming. That is, until we got to the Catalyst. We were 5 sessions in when we reached a small backwoods village that supposedly held information related to our main quest. I think it's here I should note that one of my proficiencies was sleight of hand, both for the purposes of lockpicking and for doing card tricks. As we approached the townsfolk, I decided to introduce the party with a simple card trick to produce a business card for them to read. To our shock, this simple trick was met with stunned fascination by the townsfolk, who apparently had very little understanding of actual magic and thought my rogue was some powerful sorcerer. I asked the Dungeon Master about it out of character, and he admitted he just thought it would be funny. Back in character, my rogue thinks for a moment, then puts on his best used car salesman smile and starts going along with it, blowing the villagers' minds with more close-up magic and BS stories of the party's incredible feats. The rest of the party are all playing along with this as it plays out, that is, except for the wizard. At some point, during a large dinner celebration where my rogue is still buttering up the villagers, Wizard decides to put an end to this charade and literally declares to the townsfolk, "That's not real magic, this is magic," before casting dancing lights above the table. Seeing an opportunity for more fun roleplay, I decide that my rogue wouldn't want to lose the crowd, so he responds, "A bunch of fireflies you had in your coat is real magic." What followed was Wizard doing more and more of his spells to try and prove me a fraud, and my fool face only egging him on. He cast Misty Step, literal smoke and mirrors. Fly, you can see the wires. A full-on fire spell. Give me some whiskey and a torch, I can do that too. While this is going on, Wizard is getting more and more pissed, to the point where I start realizing I may have pushed him too far. I tried to back down by changing the subject, but Wizard refuses to let it go. He starts yelling in my face, calling me a spotlight hog, and accusing me of main character syndrome. The Dungeon Master tries to break it up, but that only made him angrier. He started accusing DM of favoritism and of taking my side, despite the Dungeon Master insisting that he wasn't playing favorites. We ended up calling it quits soon after that. I later told the Dungeon Master in private that I wouldn't be coming back. He offered to talk to Wizard and try and hash things out, but I figured that me leaving was the simplest solution. I'm still a bit ashamed of how I handled that situation. I feel like things wouldn't have gone that far if I hadn't egged him on, but at the same time, it's possible we would have ended up butting heads over something else maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Character bleed. A subject that's really important to RPG horror stories, but a subject we don't talk a lot about because I'm stupid, and in order to talk about character bleed, you need to be at least a little bit smart. The essential concept is that you as a person cannot completely separate yourself from your character, and sometimes feelings from out of character are going to bleed in character. Feelings from in character are going to bleed out of character. For example, if something scary happens to your character, you get scared. These sort of things happen all the time. It is a natural part of playing a game. It's when people are getting actively upset that you might want to start managing things, and you tried to do that. This is far from harmful roleplay. You're just joking around, and everything that you're saying would not be out of place in my game, for example, but clearly Wizard was uncomfortable with it. However, the key is, when you try to back down, Wizard wouldn't let you. That is bad. You tried to mitigate, you tried to retreat, you tried to reduce the bleed, but Wizard wanted to stay upset. That is a red flag. If this is the kind of thing that sets Wizard off, it would only be a matter of time before things went downhill. I don't think you needed to leave. I think Wizard needs to have a conversation with the Dungeon Master. My girlfriend, 25 female, and I, 25 male, have been together for 3+ years since college. We graduated 2 years ago, settled down in the same city. We are now talking about marriage, but tonight, she was scrolling through my phone and noticed in my chat app a chat with a female friend. Let's call her Felicia. And she got so mad. Felicia is a middle school classmate. Since middle school, we have been friends on our shared interests in sci-fi and fantasy worlds. For example, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, anime, just nerdy stuff in general. We kept in touch online throughout the years, but there has never been anything remotely romantic between us. Since I became friends with Felicia in middle school, I have had a few girlfriends. Felicia has always been aware of the fact that I'm with someone because I like posting on social media about my girlfriend and I, like a trip we took together or some cute paintings that we drew. And I love to bring up my girlfriend in conversations, including those with Felicia. For example, when Felicia mentions a cool mechanical keyboard, I'm like, yeah, my girlfriend got me this keyboard last month. It's so awesome. Not to mention that Felicia and I now live literally on the opposite ends of the earth. We have not seen each other in real life or in video call, or even had a single phone call for like 5 years now. We just chat occasionally online. Like the last few months, we have maybe had 10 days where we chat all about some sci-fi movies or world building. I explained to my girlfriend that we only chat about the nerdy sci-fi stuff. My girlfriend responded, "You know how a person has a limited urge to share and chat about things. If you share with female friend, you won't want to share with me."
Yeah, it's just really exciting what they're doing with the next... Justin? Are you okay? The inevitable has occurred. What does that mean? I'm his girlfriend, and you just drained my boyfriend's entire social battery. All that nerd talk has finally put an end to him. That is insane. People can have multiple relationships in their lives without just turning into a vegetable. Not him. I always knew you would do this in your attempt to steal my boyfriend. Steal him from you? That's crazy. Why is this an absurd concept? You're a girl and you're talking to him. It makes sense to me. 'Cause I'm not even here! What? Dude, I'm halfway across the world! Yeah, you feel stupid, don't you? You feel really dumb now, don't you, huh?
Girlfriend has never been interested in any of these weeb topics, so I asked if she would be interested in hearing me talk about any of these things. She admitted, no, she would not be interested, which, to be honest, I'm totally fine with, so I explained to her that Felicia is the only friend I have that I can talk about these nerdy things with. Yeah, I just don't have that many adult friends into that stuff. She said, okay, but this doesn't change her feelings. I asked her, why is she so insecure? She answered, don't make this about her, this is about me. I said, I just thought this is stupid. Okay, that's my bad. And girlfriend answered, why don't I f off and leave her alone? She also said that me being there will just annoy her more. I'm very indignant, and she doesn't seem to want to discuss this anymore, so I let her be. Am I the a-hole for keeping in touch with Felicia and or with how I dealt with girlfriend in this situation? I know relationship stories often appear one-sided, so I'm happy to supply any more info. Well, this is fun. Drumroll, please. Not the a-hole. Look, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to recommend that you end a 3-year relationship over something like this, but this goes beyond just a tabletop role-playing game. You talk about nerdy stuff with your friend, and your girlfriend wants you to stop because... why? People should be allowed to have friends with other people of other genders. It is absolutely ridiculous how insecure some folks get when their partner just talks to someone else. Most of my friends are women. A lot of those women have partners. And I can't even begin to describe the unbearable cringe I would feel if I'm told I can't be friends with those people because I'm gonna make their partners insecure. That would be stupid, wouldn't it? Speaking of, it may have been unwise to say it was stupid to her face, but I mean, you're not wrong. It is stupid. I don't think the relationship needs to end immediately, but before you get married, this is something you're gonna want to figure out. And if you can't figure it out, you might want to consider ending it. I've been binging your videos lately, and a line from your commentary in an older video about treating DMs like humans reminded me of my own that guy story. Of all the lines to remind me I had a story in the first place. For a heads up, I'm digging back about 20 years for this, so details are a little fuzzy. Also, I think I've posted the second part of this on the r/RPG horror stories subreddit in the past, so in case this seems familiar, I apologize. I'll try not to ramble, but this may run a little long. Heads up, at one point the story mentions bladder functions and strays into in-game, great! Y'all really know how to end it on a high note, don't you? Or at least it was some form of assault. It was not okay, whatever it was. It's all pretty gross. Our story focuses on a guy we'll call Durden because he idolized Tyler Durden from Fight Club and tried to make that movie his whole personality. To head off confusion as to why I put up with this guy, I was not in the best place back then. I hadn't realized I was asexual or transgender, so I was going through a lot of inner turmoil, and almost everyone in my social circles had moved away for university or to start careers, leaving me with only Durden and a guy best described as his sidekick. So I fooled myself into pretending I enjoyed their company. We mostly hung out and talked about Dungeons & Dragons. 3.5 was in its heyday at the time. Other nerd stuff and so on. For our first tale of Durden, summer rolled around and two things coincided. My parents went away on a holiday for a couple of weeks and a few friends came home to visit. So naturally, we organized a day of D&D with me as the game master for the first ever time. The actual game went okay, bar a few new GM mistakes that kind of make me cringe to think about, but everything went fine. Fun was had by all, and then everyone went home but Durden and Sidekick, who crashed for the night. The next day, they were insistent on playing their characters more and pestered me into making a dungeon for them. Thus, I spent the day at a desk crafting a multi-story dungeon for them while they chilled and hung out without me in my own house. Eventually, I was done, and we spent a few hours with Durden's terrifyingly power-gamed Ranger. See, they can be powerful. It's probably not a good thing here, but like, look, give Rangers this win, okay? Tearing through all manner of monsters, including a beholder and purple worm that ambushed them with no combat lasting more than 2 rounds. Sidekick's rogue was also present. All the way, they metagamed constantly, to the point where none of my traps mattered, even if they failed perception, and argued with how I ran monsters. At one point he said, "That is a demon, so it's chaotic evil, and it wouldn't be sly and deceptive, it would just charge in," about a demon that the monster manual described as calculating and devious. I couldn't care less, and I just caved. This could have been fun for me despite the lack of role-playing or even logic to my dungeon if I didn't feel like I was being treated like a servant. Now, clearly, I saw the light after this and stopped hanging out with people who didn't respect me, right? Wrong. Our second tale happened sometime later, when Durden learns of a local gaming club in a library and suggests the three of us all check it out. It seemed like a decent club, mostly Warhammer and board games, but one guy was starting up a D&D game that night we showed up. We were invited, and me and Durden eagerly signed up. I made an Elven Ranger who was kind of a reboot of my first ever D&D character, and Durden made a cleric of Palor. Pretty sure you mean Paylor, but, you know, to each their own. There were 4 other players, I think, but I only remember the wizard, a pretty cool guy who I got along with really well. We chatted pre-game and during downtime and also worked well within character. And there was also this samurai guy, a kind of OP version of the class from a third-party supplement. The first session went fine. If I recall correctly, we arrived in a new land, rushed to rescue a coastal outpost of explorers we found on fire, and at the end of the session agreed to travel inland to investigate their mysterious attackers. I went home happy to get to finally play D&D and possibly make new friends. Yay. Next week, I met up with Durden before heading to the library, and my heart sank. He was both drunk and stoned. I have no moral obligation to these activities, but A, this is obviously not an appropriate state to show up to a games club in, and B, Durden was particularly insufferable when inebriated. Fool that I was, I felt I was responsible for his behavior, but also didn't try and convince him not to go. In defense of my past self, I don't think it would have worked. So I resigned myself to reining him in. We got to the club, sat down, and already everyone was uncomfortable. We got into playing, and I honestly can't remember any of the story because the first NPC we met, Durden declares, "I pee on his leg." He used a stronger word than that, but that word will come up a lot, so I toned it down. Am I not allowed to say piss either? Oh, come on! The GM clearly didn't know how to deal with it, so just laughed nervously and brushed past it. Durden became obsessed, though. Investigating a mysterious tablet in some ruins, I pee on the tablet. Strangely ornate gate, I pee on the gate. We defeat a band of goblins guarding a tower. Oh, those poor goblins. People are getting more and more uncomfortable and are trying to shrug it off and joke about the apparently incontinent cleric. In hindsight, the cleric seemed able to do this very quickly, as if he had some disturbing version of the quick draw feat. Eventually, the samurai called him out on this. In character, the response? I pee on your sword. The sword that represented her oath to her master and her honor. I'm pissing on the honor! My ranger and the wizard managed to convince her not to kill our only healer. Given how OP the build was, the cleric wouldn't have stood a chance anyway, and we calmed things down. Apparently, Durden held a grudge though. This is where my earlier content warning comes into play. That night, Durden snuck into her room as she slept, stood on her bed and declared, I pee all over her. The table came to a screeching halt, the awkward silence broken only by the wizard saying, Isn't that sexual assault? Nobody responded. Bafflingly, the GM made the samurai's player roll to see if she woke up, and somehow she failed and remained asleep until morning. It should be noted that this is the only female character in the party, but the player was male and there were no other women at the table, unless you count me, but I thought I was a guy back then, so. Anyway, at least this isn't a case of the only woman at the table being targeted, as in many other horror stories. Still creepy though. Damn right. I don't remember the rest of the session. I just kind of shut down. After several thousand years, the session came to an end. I said my goodbyes and hurriedly herded Durden out the door before he could continue making everyone uncomfortable. In hindsight, the looks people gave me were sympathetic. I think they understood the kind of friendship dynamic at play. I was too embarrassed to ever go back. Durden did, though. I gave him some excuses to pass on, but I dread to think what he actually said about me, though I doubt anyone would believe him if he tried making me look bad. Fortunately, things eventually came to an end, and I distanced myself from Durden. I have no idea what he's doing now, Nor do I care to find out. I got a new job and moved closer to actual friends and built a new social circle and eventually came to understand my own gender and sexual orientation. Years on, I'm doing much better at choosing my friends, and we have a weekly gaming group of people I love who respect each other and never talk about their characters' bodily functions. We start Curse of Strahd tomorrow, and I'm very excited. Sorry for going on so much. I'm not good at brevity. I hope this wasn't too gross a story. The line you cited at the beginning of the story is an appropriate line to remind you of this particular story. This is a DM who is not treating you like a person. Obviously, DMs provide a service for the players, but it's not a service position. You're trying to have fun as well. You need to collaborate with your players, and they need to collaborate with you. It's something that I think a lot of people forget about, and some people purposefully ignore. It's even worse if you feel trapped in some kind of friendship. That was my experience with my first ever D&D game. I had a player who treated me like a vacuum cleaner, and I felt like I couldn't do anything about it, even if I could have. However, with You're That Guy, on top of all those problems, he's also just straight up disgusting, and apparently has a sidekick. So neither of those things are really great, especially the disgusting thing. I mean, it's bad enough when you're not treated like a human. It gets even worse when that guy starts talking about bodily functions. Let's just get to the outro. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Q&Play series, where we answer your questions in a rambling, unscripted format. We're playing some video games. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment bodily functions to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email in the description. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
Literally halfway across the world.